At the end of the day, pirates took to the seas for one thing, and one thing above all else: money. In the golden age of piracy, taking to the seas as a marine criminal was a highly effective means of making money, and many sailors opted to turn to a life of crime as the rewards began to outweigh the risks. Whilst the classic image of a pirate might take your mind to a vision of a crew prying open a wooden chest to reveal a golden glowing stash of coins, this was actually only part of the goal. There were many ways of making money out on the high seas of the Caribbean in the early 1700s, some of which were more nefarious than others, but all of which were utilised by the pirate crews of the infamous Golden Age. The specific treasure that pirates took depended on the region, time, and speciality of the crews in question, but many pirates needed to be as opportunistic as possible in order to succeed in this violent and often unpredictable trade. Today we will be examining just what pirates during the golden age of piracy in the Caribbean classed as treasure. We'll look primarily at the specific targets that pirates aimed for in terms of loot when boarding ships, and what they took from others for their own gain. Sit back and relax as we take a journey across the high seas to discover what pirate treasure actually consisted of. Welcome to Walk the Plank. The most common class of ship targeted by pirate crews operating in the Caribbean in the golden age of piracy was by far the merchant trade ship. As ships transferred goods between mainland Europe and European colonies set up in the Americas, a great deal of maritime traffic formed in the Atlantic. These ships not only carried valuable goods, but money acquired from selling them, meaning that a pirate who could overpower one could quickly find his or her path to a life of wealth and luxury. As for the specifics of what was being transported on said merchant trade ships, it was something of a lucky dip. Depending on the ship, a pirate crew could find all manner of commodities being traded amongst the New World colonies. Such commodities ranged from building materials such as wood, bricks, and metals for setting up infrastructure in the Americas, to valuable industry crops such as sugarcane, various spices, cotton, tobacco, and dye farmed on American plantations. The skins and furs of various hunted animals, as well as cloths, linens, and items of clothing were traded back and forth, allowing pirates an abundance of opportunity in the face of a merchant trade ship encounter. Just as it goes with modern market prices, the prices of goods in the golden age of piracy fluctuated for the merchants on board the ships, an economy that transferred to the pirates when they'd stolen the loot for themselves. Some materials were more sought after than others at particular times, so pirates would often make an effort to discern what the ship was carrying before choosing to board. Once the loot was secured, a pirate crew was faced with the task of selling the commodities on at ports, where fence merchants willing to buy stolen goods were often waiting. It was all well and good capturing merchant ship after merchant ship, but the real money to be earned by pirates was in what you or I would traditionally class as treasure: gold, silver, and precious gems. Whilst it was almost unheard of for a pirate crew to come across a ship full of valuable loot of this kind, the average pirate probably ran into it quite often. Many merchant ships would have carried a small supply of valuables or jewelry on board, but the bulk of it would actually have come from the captors themselves. For pirates undertaking big scores, such as large trade ships, military vessels, or boats transporting society's elite, such loot could be taken right from the victims on board the ships themselves. Pirates would often stage shakedowns of the passengers on board their quarries before releasing them, allowing them to claim a great deal of loot, which, like the commodities in the previous section, was then sold off at ports, or in some cases just kept for themselves. Some captives would also be tortured or coerced into revealing the locations of larger, more valuable stashes, which a pirate could then pursue at a later date. Treasure didn't necessarily have to have a great monetary value, and pirates were often lucky to come across vessels containing repair materials to keep their vessels in ship shape. All manner of vessels could have been carrying such materials, from tiny public-owned vessels to massive military man-of-war ships. It was incredibly taxing on a ship to be constantly in action, especially in a setting as action-packed as the golden age of piracy in the Caribbean. So pirate crews needed to constantly survey the state of repair their vessel was in to ensure that they would not sink, run aground, or lose easily in combat. Cloth for sails, huge lengths of rope, wood, tools, and nails were often taken, as well as anchors and new weapons to deck the ship out with. Even just everyday tools to keep the pirates going fall under this category. Heading below the deck, a pirate crew could expect to find a wealth of appliances and useful tools to keep themselves alive and thriving in the harsh environments they operated in. Cooking utensils, cleaning supplies, personal hygiene items, and even just objects to keep pirates entertained and occupied were plundered in these circumstances. One of the most important things to keep an eye on was the levels of food and drink stock present on board a pirate ship. Without food and without drink, the pirates would quickly succumb to hunger or thirst, and their exploits and adventures were in turn soon to put an abrupt end to this matter. Pirates would often find themselves at sea for long periods of time at once, where either they could not return to port for legal reasons, or were too far away from a reliable port to do so. In these situations, vessels were sometimes boarded purely just to replenish stocks of food and drink, keeping the pirates happy and healthy. Food items that took a long time to perish or rot were prioritized, as they could keep the pirate crews going for weeks at a time. For example, hardtack biscuits, rice and dried foods that could fill a pirate up and last a long time. Having said that, pirates weren't fussy by any means, and they took what they could get. Fruit was highly sought after to stave off the ravages of scurvy, and the more variation a pirate could get in his or her diet, the better. Fishing or even whaling ships were targeted more often than not, as fish was a difficult and time-consuming food for pirates to catch, with the limited resources available to them on their own ships. As for drink, pirates could afford to leave little to their victims. Without a steady supply of clean water, pirates were in great danger, but they opted for alcoholic drinks at every chance they could get. Rum, wine and ale in particular went down a treat. Not only were weapons useful to sell on the market when a pirate crew arrived back at the port, they also, unsurprisingly, proved useful in combat situations, raids, or boardings. Unless a merchant ship was carrying weapons as its main cargo, it is unlikely that pirates bothered to board ships specifically to take the weapons being used by the crews on board. Weapons were then often taken as a bonus to whatever the main commodity on board the captive ship was. Pirates would make sure to take any weapons from the captive crews upon leaving the boarded ship, but would also sometimes make use of their cannons or mortars. Many sailors, for defensive purposes, would have carried pistols, knives, and perhaps even early forms of the grenade, as well as occasionally swords. Military ships would have proved much more valuable when it came to weaponry stocking. More commonly, it was ammunition that was taken by pirates across the Caribbean in the golden age of piracy. As pirates boarded ships and took captives, their supplies would eventually dwindle, and it was extremely dangerous for them to get caught in a battle without enough ammunition. Medicinal supplies were just as favourable. As combat and disease ravaged pirate crews, the pirates themselves needed to maintain a healthy enough lifestyle to make it through their voyages until they could next hit land. One of the behaviours most synonymous with pirates was their fabled tendency to bury their treasure, usually in chest form with a view to digging it up later. The legends and rumours go that pirate captains would bury their treasure on desert islands, complete with a map leading to it. Sorry to shatter the iconic image, but this would appear to be nothing more than a frequently used literary trope when discussing pirates and pirate captains. This can be found most notably in the novel Treasure Island by Scottish author Robert Louis Stevenson, where treasure was buried by the character Captain Flint. Treasure Island is thought to have launched the rumour that pirates buried their treasure into circulation, along with many other pirate myths and legends. In reality, the vast majority of what many pirates looted was perishable: commodities, food, clothing, and the like. One famous pirate, however, defied this rule and actually did bury his treasure: William Kidd. He was known to have buried some of his treasure on Gardiner's Island, not too far from New York City. His aim was to bury his treasure and use it to bargain his way out of a hanging when the law caught up to him. Ultimately, however, he failed and was hanged in May 1701. At the end of the day, what was a pirate without treasure of some kind? For so many in the early 1700s, the allure of treasure called them to the sea. So much money was to be made from the plundering of treasure in the golden age of piracy, and many pirates grew very wealthy off of it. What does come as a surprise, though, is just what some of the pirates counted as their treasure. It took many forms, and many pirates could count themselves lucky to come across anything from a trove of gold necklaces to a basket of fruit out on the high seas. Thank you for watching this episode of Walk the Plank. Make sure you subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, and we'll see you next week for another one. Cheers!